How y'all doing? I'm Paul Ryan, your host of the Across the Cowboys podcast. If you're new to the show, thank you for joining us. And to our regular listeners, welcome back. With me, as always, is my co-host, the greatest co-host in the world, Mike the Pig Crum. Mike, how are you?
Doing good, my friend. How you doing, Paul?
Good, man. It's nice to have you back in your regular spot this week, sir.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Ready to talk Deadpool Wolverine and really upset our guests.
Yes, sir. Mike, where can we find you on X?
At CD Piglet, guys. Nice and easy.
Yes, sir. Of course, no show is complete without the conductor of the Jake Ferguson hype train.
Oh, God. Off the rails already?
I got a feeling I know what he's going to say, and I'm waiting for it.
Mr. Brenden Fergy Smith. Brenden, how are you?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here.
Brenden, where can we find you on X, my friend?
You can find me at Brenden_Smith26.
I'm Paul Ryan. You can find me on X at Paul_Ryan15. Well, as the offseason continues and training camp has started, we're continuing our series, Cowboys Beef. Joining us this week is 1/3 of the Death, Taxes, and Sports podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Ben Holloway to the show. Ben, how are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing well, and happy to be here, chop it up with some Cowboys fans, and talk about how Jerry Jones is our favorite person / least favorite person.
Ben coming out on fire. Ben, where can we find you on X, sir?
It's at Ben DTS podcast.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, Ben, well, let's go ahead and get after it, man. You know, it's not easy being a Cowboys fan, but I'm curious, what led to you becoming a Cowboys fan?
So I was younger. Well, we all were, I guess, when they were winning. We were all younger. But I was born 87, so I honestly don't remember a ton from those Super Bowls, but I do know as a young kid watching football or watching any sport, you kind of hop on to the team that's winning. And so back then, that's what it was. It started out, I was 87, so I was like 7 years old when they first won in 93, 6 or 7. So I don't remember a ton from those Super Bowls, but I do know that that's definitely why I became a fan. Now, why I'm still a fan, I don't know. I guess we can all ask the same question. They haven't done anything of relevance for a long time. But once you're my team, you're my team. So they are my team and will be moving forwards. So yeah, it started out pretty easily, similar to probably a bunch of Cowboys fans. When you were younger, they were winning. Winning is fun. You just started to watch the NFL, root for the best team, and so that's how it all started.
Imagine being Brenden and you're a fan and you ain't seen no winning, nothing.
I feel attacked. Right now.
What's your favorite Cowboys memory? Is it from back in the 90s with those teams, or were you too young then? You got a more familiar one lately?
Talking to me or Brenden?
You, Ben. You know Brenden ain't got none from the 90s.
Yeah, true. I mean, honestly, even though it wasn't a Super Bowl and honestly it was just a first-round win, I mean, I think it's pretty cool that we can say that we put Tom Brady to retirement.
That's a good one, man.
In an adult life, it's like, he always beat us. I don't care the team was worse. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's still Tom Brady. Still had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Forget what everybody else on the team. You had two of the best 20 receivers in the entire league. You still have a team. Still have a pretty darn good team. And they demolished him. And it was Brady's last game, and it was in Tampa. And we probably all thought, Dak, can you build on this? And then next week came and flat on his face against the Niners. But as an adult, favorite memory would probably be that, because no matter what anybody else says, we can say as a fact we put Tom Brady into retirement.
It's amazing how it went from Dallas hasn't won a road game in 30 years. This is Tom Brady. They can't beat Tom Brady. The minute we blew them out, it was like, well, they were 8-9. What do you expect? They suck.
Yeah, exactly. The team was trash. The team was trash. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I like the recency pick because, I can feel involved. He's like, I watched that too. So, well, who was your favorite all-time Cowboy?
For me, he wasn't on the team that long, but Deion Sanders.
Oh,
He's
That's a
honestly
great pick.
he's honestly my favorite athlete, period. Any sport, anytime. Because, and it's a simple reason. It's not even really how good he was, because we all know how great, not even good. Good doesn't do it justice. It's that when you watched him, you like, he was having fun all the time. And you could see it. You're watching him. He's just absolutely loved performing, loved playing. Like you could feel the enjoyment. You could see like how happy it was. It made him to compete. And that joy, it's like you'd kind of gravitate towards that. He loved the spotlight. He loved the moment. You could tell he had fun. And he took it like, not only am I going to be great, I'm also going to entertain. And he did both. And then that's just the bottom line. For me, personally, it's weird in football. To me, I mean, there's another debate, I'm sure, but to me, there's a clear-cut best quarterback, there's a clear-cut best cornerback, and there's a clear-cut best wide receiver, without any debate. As much as I hate Brady, I can't deny the rings. So for Brady, Dion for me is best corner, and Jerry Rice best receiver. I don't think there's any debate at those three positions, which is kind of weird, but that's just how it is. And so for me, Dion, he was just so fun to watch. And I just remember from the 90s, I do remember, his high stepping, that celebration. He was probably the first one to do it. So that high step celebration is definitely one of the things that I remember. But yeah, Dion, just how much fun you could tell he had. It just made me gravitate towards him. Like it was awesome to watch. And honestly, people who have a problem about, even right now, about him being cocky, okay, well, do you want him to be somebody else? That's who he is. That he's real. If you don't like it, that's fine. But you can't find a quote where he lied or he wasn't himself. He is himself. That's what you want out of a person, out of a coach, out of an athlete, just a friend, a family member, someone to be themselves, someone to be consistent. He's just himself. He always is, always has been. I can respect that. You know exactly what you're getting. That's who he is. He's not going to fake anything. So all those things, I guess, combined, that's my favorite Cowboys player.
I think Dion would be, if you made everybody vote on something like the GOAT of something. I think you did, like you said, you got Brady, but some people would say, the cheating or the era or whatever. Rice, people would be like, oh, Randy Moss or Megatron or what, so I think percentage wise, even over MJ, because some would say LeBron or whatever. I think Deion Sanders would get the highest amount of who's the greatest cornerback of all time. He would be the closest to 100% if you made everyone in the world vote.
Yeah, no disagreement on that. None at all. I mean, tell me another man that saw Jerry Rice was like, let's go. Not afraid of him at all. And I'm sure Jerry won some of those one-on-one battles. I'm sure he did. He was that great. But Dion looked at him in the face and was like, yo, let's go. I'm ready. You ready? Because I'm ready. Not many corners were like, you know what? Who is the absolute best player in football? Because for many years, probably Jerry Rice was probably the best player in football. And not many guys would be like, yeah, I want to guard him. Put me on him. That was Dion's mentality. That's how he was. That's how he is now.
Yep.
So, Ben, I'm curious. I know you're a Cowboys fan, but were you a fan of Dion before he joined the Cowboys? Were in his Atlanta era, maybe his 49ers era? Or?
Honestly, I don't. I mean, I know, in watching film and the highlights and stuff, but I don't remember him on those teams. I don't remember back then. Like, I don't remember that. I remember when he joined Dallas and how he played for Dallas and the punt return touchdowns, because he had plenty of those. The high stepping celebration. Remember that? Like, I don't remember him as a Falcon or a 49er.
I got you. Well, Dion's your favorite all-time Cowboys player. Who's your current favorite Cowboys player?
For right now, it's Micah, and it's for me. It's now I do have a little bit of a beef with him because he talks too much, I think, and he doesn't always. We can talk about how Dak doesn't perform in playoff games, but there's a valid argument that Micah in some big games has disappeared as well. So that kind of annoys me for as much as he talks. There's some games where he doesn't, the big games where, you don't see him or you don't hear him. But he's my favorite because it's as a rookie, I remember he was like literally training with DeMarcus Ware. And he was like asking, he was not only like training with them, like he was engaged. He was asking questions. You could tell he wanted it. Like as a rookie, he's talking to one of the best, defensive linemen in Cowboys history. And you're watching the video of it. I think it was Hard Knocks. That's probably what it was back then. And he's like asking questions. He's like very engaged. And Micah, there's a valid argument. Although there's great, there's Bosa, there's TJ Watt, there's Myles Garrett. I can make a case that he's the best defensive player in the league. And honestly, I those three are amazing. But I would argue, whether I'm a Cowboys fan or not, that Mike is the best because he's great at everything. As Cowboys fans, can you remember a receiver, a running back, a tight end that beat him one-on-one? It's never happened. Literally, can you even just memory? Do you remember him being beat by anyone in coverage?
The only time I remember that was Week 1 versus Rob Gronkowski, Tampa Bay, his first game ever in the NFL. But that was it. That's it.
Well, there you go. I mean, this is one of the best ever. But so Garrett, he ain't doing that. Bosa ain't doing that. TJ Watt ain't doing that. So although those players may be better at pass rushing, and that's an argument as well. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. They're not as versatile. Parsons, you put Parsons at safety, which they'll never do. Parsons will be a Pro Bowler at safety. He's that athletic. He's that good. There is not really a weakness. So that's why I would argue with anyone that he's the best defensive player because he can play literally. He would probably be a Pro Bowler as a corner or a safety.
Mike Zimmer said that today in an interview. He could play 11 spots on defense and be a Pro Bowler.
I mean, I don't see the lie.
That's insane.
I don't see the lie, though. He's that good. Which is why it's annoying in some of the big games where, you're like, Michael, where are you? And I get it. The really good teams can scheme and, make him, not perform as well because, the 49ers come to mind, of course. I mean, and the Eagles, too. The Eagles do a great job of basically eliminating him because they'll never attack him. So there are game plans that can minimize great players, and I understand that. But I still think Micah can perform better in certain games than he does. But for me, he's my favorite player right now, and it's because, I mean, you can say it's too early comparisons, but he was being compared to Lawrence Taylor before he ever played a game. Before he played a game, that was a comparison. So, everybody knew how good he was and is. And who knows, depending upon how his career shakes out, he could be one of the 2 or 3 best defensive players ever. So
that's actually a good lead in for my next question. I think it's too early for him to make it on this. Maybe I'm wrong. Give me your 4 Cowboys for your Mount Rushmore.
So I stuck to offense, and this one, if I'm being honest, I didn't do a ton of research on this one. I more so went off memory, and they're all offense. So the playmaker, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman. I mean, they have there's something, I like to talk facts, not opinions, especially when I'm debating anything with anyone, because it's okay, well, you're arguing with opinions and feelings. I'm giving you numbers and statistics. So you can't, those are facts. So back to those 3, it's a fact that they were part of the team that was the first team ever to win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. That's a fact. That's part of their legacy. So those 3, and then another famous 88, I went with Drew Pearson.
Oh, all right. Old school Drew Pearson. If Micah ends up being as great as we think he is Drew Pearson going to get knocked off of the 4 and he becomes the 4th?
That's a good one. I mean, honestly, it might be Aikman because, there's I mean, he won a lot. He was the quarterback, of course, but he had Irvin and Emmitt Smith and a great offensive line, right? I mean, all those things help. I mean, that's a thing. So honestly, out of those, it might be Aikman that I would knock off. And I saw that comment too. Staubach was obviously amazing. He was great. Like I said, that one I didn't do a ton of research. I went off the top of my head and picked all offense. So those are my 4.
Him talking about that in my mind, I was like pointing towards like the signatures I have all on my wall and stuff. So I was like, oh shit, yeah, that works. Well,
Nice.
this question, there's not many answers for this, because not much happened. But what was your favorite offseason move by the Cowboys?
Honestly, I went with a coach and Mike Zimmer. And the reason is, Dan Quinn, I mean, let's be honest, when he came in, the defense was horrible. So he did a lot of great things. He did, I mean, we thank him. He was really great what he did. But if we had one weakness, well, 2, I would say, one would be in the biggest games, the defense didn't look great against the great teams. The second one would be it was a little bit too buddy-buddy. You didn't see him ever yelling at anybody. Like, never. Like, nobody, never did he get intense and swear at any, like, it didn't happen. And Zimmer ain't playing no fucking games. I don't know if you guys swear, but Zimmer ain't playing games.
Yeah,
Zimmer is not playing games. He will get in your face in front of everybody on national TV. He does not care. He's that dude. He's that type of intense type of guy. And honestly, as great as our defense has been, honestly, probably Quinn's biggest weakness is I don't really think he held players accountable. Does anybody think Zimmer ain't gonna hold people accountable? He will hold you accountable from day one. He'll cuss you out in front of everybody at training camp. He doesn't care. Either you're doing the job or you're not. You're meeting the standard or you're not. And if you're not, he's gonna let you know. So I think Zimmer was a really underrated and really good hire because I think he can continue obviously what Quinn did, but holding them more accountable, I think personally should make. I mean, let's go back to Parsons, right? I mean, there are times with Parsons, either whether it's not necessarily giving 100% effort all the time or whatever it is, Zimmer will get up in his face. Like that's rather than waiting until after the game and in the locker room, maybe Quinn's like, like on this play, maybe you should, but like saying it in a nice way. No, Zimmer ain't gonna be nice unless you deserve it. So I think that's a really big move, and I think the defense could go to another level combined with that. And I know we'll get to this later, but with that and obviously Diggs coming back, having 2 Pro Bowl corners is a big deal. So those 2 things combined, I think the defense could be a little bit better.
Ben, I think it's fair to say we lost a lot more players than we added in free agency. But when you look at the players we lost, who do you think is going to be the hardest to replace?
I'm going to kind of stick on defense. I think that he contributed a lot more than what people think, and even probably Cowboys fans think. Dorrance Armstrong, he made plays, man. He showed up. They're gonna his energy, his effort, on the D line. I mean, you need as much D line, similar to O line. You need as much D line depth as you can have, and you need as much O line depth as you can have. And Dorrance Armstrong was really, really good. And I don't think that even some Cowboys fans, I don't think appreciate how good he was. So for me, biggest loss would be Armstrong.
Yeah, I think did I have the same name? Was mine DA also?
I don't think so. I don't remember. I
thought
you said Stephon Gilmore.
I know because he people forget how great he is on special teams too.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's a big time player. What's your biggest concern heading into this year? If you had to pick one really, the one that worries you the most.
Running back. I thought they made honestly, given the contract he got, they absolutely could have afforded Derrick Henry. And I think that was a huge mistake to not even have a conversation. From what we know, they never even tried to get Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry's contract that he ended up signing was nothing crazy. Like, it was not a lot of money. And considering, the struggles that Dak has had at times, how do you quote unquote cover that up? Give him a damn beast at running back. So running back, honestly, I mean, I'm glad they got Zeke back. I mean, that's a reasonable contract. He's still, what I tell people is he will always have, you as a running back, you'll always have a job in the NFL if these two things you're good at or above average at: pass blocking and 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. If you're good at those two things, you will have a contract. You'll be on a team. And as much as the injuries and this and that has diminished him, he's still maybe the best pass blocking running back in the entire league still. And even though he's not necessarily as great as he was on those short yardage, he's still really damn good. So as a running back, those are your two strengths, and you're good at those, you're going to have a contract. You're going to be on a team. So getting Zeke back is good, but I mean, I think that's a big weakness for sure. Running back. That's my biggest concern. Because if Dowdle doesn't take a leap, I mean, Zeke ain't the bell cow anymore. He can't be. So essentially, they're relying on Dowdle to take a big leap. And he might, but are you confident that's going to happen?
Can he stay healthy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Zeke or Dowdle? Because you could say the same about both. Which one were you talking about?
Dowdle is all like, he's a stay hurt guy. Mm-hmm. Zeke plays, but he plays. He gets hurt, but he plays. But Dowdle always misses time with injury. Like, never fails.
Yeah. And that's who you're, quote unquote, relying on. Like, how do you not see that as a front office? How do you not see that as a problem? And there wasn't just Derrick Henry. They could have signed Aaron Jones. They could have, as all these running backs were going left and right, I'm like, can we get one of them? Swift goes. Aaron Jones goes. Like, Mixon got traded. They were never going to get Mixon because he's, but, Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, all these guys are going. I'm like, Dallas, there's nobody left now. Yeah. They're all gone. There's nobody left. So that's honestly the big concern, running back.
That's really fair. Well, as of right now, is this Cowboys team better or worse than last year's team?
I would say worse because of that, and because I think, as injured as he was, Tyron Smith, when he played, was still one of the best, probably 3 left tackles in the entire league. And he played, I think, 13 games last year, which is pretty good for an offensive lineman. Even a younger lineman to play 13 games is pretty good. Obviously, they lost him, and they lost the center. And they're relying on younger guys, which could be good, might not be good. But I think the team is a little bit worse because the running back situation is worse. And I think the offensive line situation is worse. So those two things, I think they're slightly not as good.
Agreed.
Do you like that Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott are both on prove it type deals?
So here's I think we got to save more of the Dak conversation. There's a couple of bullet points later on about Dak, so I'm going to save it there because I think what's going to be a bold take, but you guys can decide when we get there, which I'll save it. So I guess that's a little tease, what they call it. But as far as them being on prove it deals, I mean, I'm good with that. Like, it's kind of like one of those things that, with McCarthy, it's like, okay, you haven't really done anything in the playoffs. With Dak, okay, you haven't really done anything in the playoffs. So can you show us that before we show you the money? So as far as them being on prove it deals, that's fine, because McCarthy, I'm much more okay with being on a prove it deal because, I mean, we know that Belichick is out there. We know that Vrabel is out there. We know there are some big names, and who knows? This would be insane. be pretty shocking, but we do have Jerry Jones as an owner. Who's to say they wouldn't be like Dion? You want to be the head coach?
Possible.
Like who? Like they're I mean, that would be probably insane, but we have an owner that's relatively insane, I would say. So there's a lot of big names out there, and the Dion thing would be a huge splash, and I don't know if they would do that still, but still, the point is there's a lot of big names, so you can't at least get to an NFC Championship game, then why are we giving you another contract? So McCarthy, I'm much more okay with because of who is available, and he knows it too. He's not an idiot. So he knows he knows the pressure is on, and he's obviously mature enough to know if I perform, none of these big names are getting this job. So I think it's a heightened motivation for McCarthy because if he loves coaching, which he does, he's got to do better than he has, or else one of these big names is taking your job. So I'm good with McCarthy having it. So that's all I'll answer.
Let me ask you a question, Mike, before you ask yours. Do you think the Cowboys have done McCarthy justice, though, with the rosters he's been given to be better in the playoffs?
It's a very valid question, and I think that there have been issues, right? There have been, like, if you take away the names of the teams completely, and you put the rosters of the NFC, all of them, top to bottom, for the last 3 years, you would definitely take the 49ers roster over ours. You would definitely take the Eagles roster over ours. And you might not
this year.
Detroit last year, you would take that roster and this year. So roster-wise, have they ever had the best team in the NFC the last 3 to 4 years? No. Does that mean that they couldn't have beaten some of those teams? No, because let's be honest, as great and amazing as Brady was and as great as his defenses were usually, he regularly beat teams in the playoffs that were better than him. Which, by the way, no one likes to say it necessarily, and it looks different. Mahomes is doing the exact same thing that Brady did. He's beating teams in the playoffs that their roster is better than the Chiefs roster. But he's winning.
2 years.
But he's winning. He's doing literally the same exact thing as what Brady did. Just looks a lot different because he's a lot more athletic. And his contract is very friendly too because he just keeps restructuring. He doesn't care. He doesn't care to be the top paid. He said that yesterday. He doesn't care. So he's doing the same exact thing Brady did contract-wise as well. It's literally the same thing. And I live in Massachusetts, so it's funny that everybody roots against Mahomes because they're afraid he's the only one that could overtake him. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. So it's literally the same thing, though. Contract-wise, he's not the highest paid. He's not even close to the highest paid. And he's beating the Bengals a couple years ago in the AFC Championship game. Definitely a better roster. Eagles in the Super Bowl, better roster. 49ers in the Super Bowl, better roster. So he's beating teams that are better than his team.
I think I know your answer to this upcoming question, but let's seal it in for sure. You can only extend one: Dak, CD, or Micah.
Yeah, it's Micah.
Yeah.
It's Micah. Yeah, it's Micah. It's Micah.
That's fair. Young, great at a top end position. It totally makes sense.
I mean, he's the only one out of Dak, CD, and Micah who's the only one that's considered or thought of by non-Cowboys fans as the best player, best defensive player. Is CD the best wide receiver?
That's
no.
fair.
Is Dak the best quarterback? No. There's arguments to be made. Micah's the best defensive player. So, based upon that, that's who I would choose to pay.
Fair.
That's a very good point to bring up, though. About it's like it's other fan bases think the same way of Micah as we do with that. No, that's a great point. All right, well, I love this question. So I'm always gonna be biased, but you don't need to feel to answer the way any way that the captain of the Jake Ferguson hype train should answer this. But outside of Micah, Dak, and CD, which one of these three players do you think needs to be resigned? Jake Ferguson, Deron Bland, or Osa Odigizua?
So I went with Bland, and it's because I think that I mean, we think back a while back, the Jets with Cromartie and Revis were going to AFC Championship games with freaking Mark Sanchez. Like, you get 2 Pro Bowl corners, that's a big deal. That's a big thing. And Bland and Diggs are, I wouldn't say they're 22 or 23, but they're less than 30. They're both still really young. And you get 2 lockdown corners. I mean, Miami kind of had that last year with Ramsey and Howard, right? Xavier Howard.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you got 2 really damn good corners, that can cover up for some other things too. So I think because tight ends, I mean, Ferguson has elevated and been great, but the other 2 are decent. And based upon those 3 being drafted in the last 3 years, I think we can draft tight ends. I mean, kind of proven that. We got 3 pretty good ones that we all drafted. So you could see that go. And then Osa, he's really important. He's really, really good. But I think that having like 2 Pro Bowl corners, you're not going to replace that. To me, I think you can replace the tight end, and I think that you can replace the D-line guy, because the one thing that Dallas has done really well, hasn't translated unfortunately into January, but you take the last 15 years, I don't know if there's a team that's drafted better.
Yeah.
We've drafted
Ravens, maybe Ravens.
We've drafted really, 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 really well. And by the way, I'm sure you guys all know, when did that start? When Jerry Jones didn't have the final say in the draft room. The year that he was pounding the table to draft Manziel. I think they drafted Zach Martin. That was the first draft where he does not have the final say. And then see what happens. Yeah. So they've drafted really, really well. So I believe in the ability to, the tight end. I mean, they drafted 3 in the last 3 years, and they're all above average. They're not Kelsey or Kittle, but they're all pretty damn good. So I think they can replace tight end. And I think Osa, you can, D-line or linebacker, I don't think it's easy to replace a Pro Bowl corner compared to the other 2.
Fresno State
very, very fair.
I knew you were going to say that, Mike.
So I know. I think it's fair to say you're excited to see Micah Parsons in the Mike Zimmer defense, but which player not named Micah Parsons are you excited to see play in Mike Zimmer's defense?
Honestly, we were just talking about it. Osa. I think there's another level. I think he's really, really good. And I think there's another level. I think he has more potential to be even better than what he has been. So, and I think Zimmer has a really good chance to get that out of him. So Osa, I don't even try to pronounce his last name. So I'm just gonna go Osa.
They had Brian Broaddus was on a podcast today, and he was watching the D-line as he does, and he said Osa in drills just never miss, no matter what they tell him to do. When they switch anything, he hits it every time.
Yeah.
And man, that's impressive. It's not an easy thing to do. Give me your make or break player for 2024. And what we mean by that for people listening is he either does something this year or he's going to find himself out the door.
I mean, going with the obvious answer is Dak.
Oh, okay. I like it.
I mean, he doesn't have a new contract, right? Not yet. So if they go into the season like that, then does he get another contract from us next year? Depends upon what he does. So it's make or break. They don't give him a contract before the year. That's my answer.
I like that. Now you went big fish.
Well, that goes right into this next question. Well, after 8 years and only 2 playoff wins, is it time to move on from Dak?
I think so, and I think the team thinks so too, because if they didn't, would we be even talking about it? This contract would have been done a while ago. So I think the team has already decided, no matter what they say publicly, we're working on it. We love him. We love his leadership. We love this. no matter what they say in the media, to me, I think they've decided we're not paying you. Because if they were going to me, they would have. And the only way that I see that ending differently is literally if he at least makes a Super Bowl. Doesn't necessarily have to win it, but if he doesn't have a contract, goes into next year, I think really the only way that Dallas gives him a new contract is making the Super Bowl. Unless it's like an NFC Championship game and he has, 400 yards and 4 touchdowns and no picks, has an amazing game in the NFC Championship game, but they still lose, then he would get a contract. But to me, if he doesn't do that, he's on a new team. And I think that the organization has already been like, you know what? We want to win in the playoffs. We're not sure he can do it. No, to be fair, they don't have another. Who they got? I mean, they don't exactly have anybody, so that makes it a little bit harder. But I think that they've decided we're not paying you, no matter what they say. Because we all know Jerry Jones loves to lie, right? I mean, we know that. I mean, he said after the season, we're all in. No. Actions prove louder than words. So that's just Jerry Jones manipulating the dumb idiots in the fan base who still let him manipulate you. Because if you're smart enough, you know when he's telling the truth, and you know when he's lying. But the problem is, as you guys know, why does everyone hate the Cowboys? It has nothing to do with the Cowboys. It has to do with 90% of the fan base being delusional.
Yeah.
And Jerry Jones is, when he's talking like that, he's speaking to that 90%. So, the smart ones, I call it, can see right through his BS. But there are others like, oh, he said we're all in. Yeah, that means, we're going to spend more. We're going to do this. Like, we might get Belichick. No. None of that happened. They didn't do anything. Like I said, even if they did nothing, they did everything the same, but they signed Derrick Henry, we'd all feel much better than we do right now. Yeah. And that's only one player. That's only one all-in move. But if they had done that one thing, we'd all feel better about this team.
I think running back or defensive tackle. If they would have went and got a real player at either of those positions, that most of us would be like, okay, let's strap it up and let's go.
If Dak won MVP, do you think that'd be enough to get a new contract?
No.
Fair enough.
If he doesn't make the NFC Championship game, I mean, he basically was the MVP. There's an argument to be made. He should have been the MVP last year.
I agree.
Led him in touchdown. Led the league in touchdown passes. I think was number 2 in passing yards. Was number 1 in pass TD to interception ratio. Like, it's a very fair argument. If Lamar, let's be honest, if Lamar didn't do that on national TV on Christmas Day, Dak probably was the MVP.
Yeah.
So you asked that question. You asked that question. It kind of already happened, although not literally. But he basically was the MVP last year. And what happens? He falls on his face in the playoffs again. So MVP, that wouldn't do it. No.
Do you want to go right to one word? Because I think we know the answer to the.
Exactly. Yeah.
One word to describe Dak Prescott's career, Ben.
Overachieved.
Oh.
Good word.
4th round pick was supposed to be Tony Romo's backup. 13-3 as a rookie. Arguably his best playoff game he played was the loss his rookie season against Rodgers. So, I mean, just in 1 year, he exceeded expectations. And he's been pretty damn good besides that. So, overachieved would be my word.
After all these answers, I know no one was seeing that response. I'm just going to throw that out there. I love the response but it's like no one's going to see that one coming. That was great.
But I will say, like, to go to that question, though, the previous question, like, if the 2 options are re-sign now, I'll play the game, right? If the 2 options are re-sign now versus re-sign after the year, it's re-sign now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'll play the game. If those are the two options, you do it now because you're going to get him for less compared to what if he does win MVP.
Yeah.
Now you're paying him the highest paid quarterback in the league, even though he's not the best quarterback in the league. So if you're going to do it, you do it now.
Those are some fun answers, man. I'm really enjoying those answers. Well, fill in the blank. If blank has a breakout year, the Cowboys would be Super Bowl contenders.
I would say that, honestly, there's a lot of players, based upon who we lost, we need to take leaps. And I think, honestly, as far as potential goes and kind of I feel like hasn't been utilized as much as he should have been, Jalen Tolbert.
Oh,
Because
I
you
love that
need
answer.
you need a three. You need a third receiver. You need a third. And Gallup, we love him, but after his ACL, he was never the same. And that's just the reality. And Cooks, he's older, but he's still pretty good as a number 2. But they need a number 3. They need somebody. They need another option. With Lamb, Cooks, and obviously the tight ends need somebody else, especially when we don't believe their running game is going to be that much better, which means they're going to be throwing the ball as much as they were last year. So if that's the case, then you need somebody to step up. And Tolbert would be my answer. Because if he goes that level, I mean, you're talking about maybe the offense can overcome the running back issues. But if he doesn't, it's probably guaranteed they're not going to.
I like it.
And I mean,
Right.
like an offense good enough to like win a Super Bowl or at least go to. If they're going to be that, they need more out of Tolbert. Because there's no way.
You're right. Honestly, I think if you told me that it was Lamb, Ferguson, and Tolbert as like the 3, and Cooks is your speed guy, smart guy, like makes the right catches at the right time, like what is your 4? I would be like, oh, this offense is cooking now.
Exactly. That's what they need. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'd say Tolbert. Because I think he's got it in him. I think, to be honest, they've underutilized him. Especially last year. Like Gallup, we saw it. Like Tolbert should have been getting more looks and more playing time. Like Gallup, there's a reason he retired. Like he knew he couldn't do it. And we saw it. Like Tolbert, I think, should have gotten more targets and more looks last year. Now he's going to. So let's see what you got.
Yep.
Rooting for Jalen Tolbert for sure. All right, Ben, here we are. You get a chance to squash your beef. Here you have 2 to 5 minutes to squash any beef you have with a Cowboys player, coach, or content creator.
So I can take this one of 2 ways, or I can do both. I can go with Jerry Jones, even though he wasn't on the list, or I can go with Micah, or I can do both.
I definitely want to hear Jerry for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So Micah's is really simple. It's just, I know it's 2024, athletes have podcasts and they get asked questions and this and that. I'm all for that. But some of the things he says, especially that Niners, after they get absolutely blown out against 49ers, the regular season, said something along the lines of, like, now it's personal. How was it not prior to that? They ended your season 2 years in a row. Now it's personal? What the hell are you talking about? Like, that's just one example. But there's certain things that he said that I'm just like, bro, like, what are you thinking? What are you doing? But that one probably stands out the most. Like, yeah, now it's personal. Okay, they ended your season 2 out of the last 3 years, and you decided after we get blown out in a regular season game, now it's personal. Now I want to beat them. Why didn't you want to beat them before? Like, what are you talking about? So some of the stuff that Micah says, and that's one of them, would be, my beef with him, and his play in some big games that we already kind of alluded to. Of course, last year in the playoffs, the whole defense didn't show up. It ain't just him. It was everybody. I mean, Green Bay had wide open guys, like 20, no one within 20 yards a couple of times. Like, not like literally 20 yards. There's nobody near a receiver. Like, that's just horrible game plan, horrible execution. Like, that was just pathetic. As open as some, like, literally 20 yards is not an exaggeration. the Green Bay guys looking around like, I don't see any Cowboys player. I guess I should catch this ball. I guess I should catch it and just walk into the end. Like, it was bad. So it wasn't just Micah, obviously. As far as Jerry goes, to me, it's here's the argument that everybody. This also may surprise y'all, but the argument that is very common national media. Jerry Jones is the reason that we haven't won. I think that's way too simplistic of a way to look at it because was he on the field in that Green Bay game? Was he there? Did he miss those tackles? Did he miss those coverages? No, he's not the one in between the lines. The players, to me, have not been held as accountable as they should have been. Now, I don't know when it happened, but I think the Cowboys team and players came to a realization that, okay, Jerry Jones is that grandpa at the party that just goes nuts and talks and talks and talks. Doesn't make any sense. He's a lunatic and he's going to do what he's going to do. But we got to play. I think that's what they've reached. I don't think they pay attention to anything Jerry says. I don't think the Cowboys players, if you asked them, what did Jerry say last week? They'd be like, I don't know. I'm just playing. I'm trying to play. Like, I don't think Jerry Jones is the biggest reason that they have not won. I think that's a very common theme for everyone to say because it's easy because he's been the one common that entire 30 years or almost 30 years. But he's not the one in between the lines. When they had the number 1 seed with Romo and they lost to the Giants, he wasn't on the field, wasn't playing. He didn't throw those picks that Romo threw. Like, it's just too easy to say that Jerry Jones is the reason. So I don't believe that at all. I think the players are the biggest reason. I mean, they've had, not more recently, but that Romo team and then 2016, they were the number 1 seed twice. The one year they had like 11 Pro Bowlers. Like, so it was Jerry's fault that you had 11 Pro Bowlers and you didn't win? Like, you didn't win. You didn't play. So I think it's way too easy of a narrative that everyone has jumped onto that, it's Jerry Jones' fault. But my, I guess, issue with him would be, after that debacle, my immediate reaction was, if this is what it takes to get McCarthy fired, I'm okay with it. If that's what it took for him to get fired, I can deal with it. But he didn't get fired. He didn't get fired. And there's been a very common theme in the playoff games and even in the big games. They start slow. That a lot of that has to do with coaching. How you start games is, are you prepared to go out and play from the first snap? Now, a lot of these playoff games, they're behind. And it's easy to come back on, let's say, the Cardinals being down by 10 or 14 points. Playoff teams, it's not easy to make those comebacks. And that has been part of the problem. And they've started slow. In every one of these Cowboys losses under his tenure, they've started slow. The only time they didn't was the game they beat Brady.
Yeah,
that was it. That was it for the most part. Other than that, they come out flat. Happened this year too. Packers got first drive, touchdown. Like, they come out flat. And that has to do with coaching. So my biggest thing for this offseason was, definitely should have got Derrick Henry. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And regardless of who you got, McCarthy should not be the head coach. It could be Vrabel. It could be Belichick. It could be – there were candidates. There were plenty of candidates. The fact that he's still the head coach, I got a problem with that. He doesn't deserve to be. So that would be my biggest gripe with Jerry would be, you needed a running back. Everybody knew that. Everybody still knows that. Derrick Henry did not cost the Ravens a lot of money. They could have done that for that same exact contract, and Dallas still would have been in an okay position to sign these 3 guys if they are going to sign them. So the fact that McCarthy's still the head coach and the fact they didn't get Derrick Henry, there's my beef with Jerry.
Fair.
Like it, man. Like that a lot. Okay, so I have a would you rather question. I know where you're going to go with this, but you'll play the game, so I'll ask anyway. Would you rather trade Dak for multiple first round picks, but Trey Lance is the starter for 3 years, or sign Dak to a 5-year, $300 million deal that's fully guaranteed?
So here's the bold one that you guys are going to be shocked by. I think that if you have decided, which to me they have decided, he's not the guy. The only other quarterback on the roster that maybe, possibly, could be the guy is Trey Lance, right? So if you have decided that you're not going to pay Dak, don't you have to decide if you're going to pay Trey Lance? And how do you justify paying him if he doesn't play yet again? So this is my really bold take that they will never do, and probably never any organization probably wouldn't do it given his cap hit. But I'd be like, Dak, you know what? We're going to try and trade you, but if we don't, you're the backup. Don't care what you're getting paid. Don't care. Either we're trading you or you're the backup. And that's what it is. Because if you have decided you're not paying him, you got to see if you want to pay Trey. How are you going to make that decision if you haven't seen him play? So for me, as bold as it would be, and as crazy as it would be, and I think that they could, even now, even after the draft, they could trade Dak. They could find a partner for it. They could do it. They could get draft picks the next year. You could still trade Dak right now if you wanted to, even almost in August. If you wanted to do it, there would be one or two teams that you could make a deal. So it's either that or you're the backup, which given his contract, I guess that's impossible. But you got to see what Trey Lance is. If you don't pay Dak, he's the only other quarterback that could be a starter. Cooper Rush did great, those 4 games. We give him credit. But he ain't no starter. He wouldn't be a starter on any of these 32 teams. But Trey Lance might be. But if you're not going to pay Dak, because Trey Lance is also a free agent. So to me, you got to see what the hell Trey Lance is, even if it means your team is worse this year. Maybe it is. But maybe you need to find out whether or not you have to draft a quarterback, or maybe you already got one. Because at this point, I don't care what anybody says, Niners fan, Cowboys fan, anybody, nobody knows if Trey Lance is ever going to be a quality starting quarterback. Nobody can say that with confidence. There's not enough of a sample size.
Less than 500.
There's barely a sample size. You can't confidently say he's trash, he'll never be a starter, or no, he's going to be a quality starter. You can't say that. So you have to find out. You can't pay him if you never find out. So you got to find out. So I think, who knows? Maybe secretly they're hoping Dak's injuries issues maybe prop up, and then Trey Lance is the starter for like 4 weeks, and maybe he goes 4-0. Maybe that's enough to be like, you know what? We're going to ride the hot hand. And maybe secretly that's not what they don't hope injury on anybody. So that's an exaggeration. But maybe in the back of their minds, they're like, if that happens, then we'll get a chance to see if we should pay Trey. I don't know. He's the only other quarterback that might possibly be an NFL starter. You got to see what he is. That's just me.
I hate that, but I respect it.
I just think that, yes, we all agreed that, Dak, the other rosters have been better. But it's not like Dallas has been a trash roster. It's been pretty good. A lot of talent. Not as much talent, but a lot of talent. So if he was going to succeed in the playoffs, it already would have happened. And that's the conclusion the teams come to. They're just not saying it. So for me personally, and I hate saying this, by the way, I love his leadership is off the charts. And his adversity, what he's battled through, his mom, his brother, all, as a leader, I would say maybe he's the best leader in the entire league. Because those dudes will die for him. As an absolute leader, if you're talking about leadership only in a QB trait, I might say he's the best leader in the entire league.
Agreed.
Always says the right things. The players always back him. Like, as a leader, he's amazing. All the adversity he's come through and all the community service he's done. I don't like saying this. I actually like Dak. Clearly, he's a really good quarterback. We just talked about it. He almost won MVP. So he's got plenty of talent. I mean, you can't be like second or third MVP and you suck. I mean, anybody like clearly has talent, right? So it sucks.
Hurts did it a couple years ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It would suck to see him go, to be honest. I do like him as a person and as a leader and everything, but it just kind of feels like, man, just move on. You want to move on. It's kind of like the Cowboys are like that, you know, if you've all been in a relationship that you don't want to end, but you know you have to end. That's kind of where it is. I think both sides know it has to end, but neither side is saying it. But I think Dak feels that way. I think the Cowboys feel that way. But they're just putting on this face like, oh, yeah, we love him. You know, Dak, yeah, I want to play for the Cowboys. I want to finish. They both know. It's time to move on. I think both sides know, and I think that's what's going to happen. And now that I'm saying that, watch Dak get his new contract tomorrow.
No, it happened while we were on the pod. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Y'all would have said that already, for sure. I just think that there comes a time when, you know, I mean, it's definitely not the same thing. Not the same thing at all, because Brady had a lot more success and won championships. The comparison works as both sides knew it was time to move on.
Yeah.
And I think right now, both sides know it's time to move on. Because from Dak's perspective, why would I take any less money to help you? Why? Why? And knowing that I'm going to be one of the top 3 highest paid quarterbacks next year, whether it's with you or somebody else. So if I'm Dak, and I'm sure his agent is saying the same thing, I'm not making any compromises. You get nothing. After what you put me through in the media, you know, dragging basically, I mean, they've said, like, about your starting quarterback, even Jerry has said things that no other team would say about their starting quarterback. Like, nobody. You don't hear anybody, like, actively dissing in the media their starting quarterback. Jerry has done that. So if I'm Dak, no, you either give me top dollar or you're going to give me top dollar next offseason or somebody else is going to give me top dollar. I'm not doing you any favors. Not after the contract negotiations last time, and not after the stuff that you've said periodically over the years in the media. Like, no, you're not getting any favors. And I think that maybe Dallas is like, well, you're either giving us a favor because we're not making the highest paid, or you're not. And Dak's like, well, I'm not. So I'm not taking less, and you're not giving me more, so this ain't going to work. So I'll ball out this year, try and, you know, win an MVP maybe, so I can get that high-paying contract. But you ain't giving it to me, then I ain't taking less. So for me personally, and it's also, and I think CeeDee Lamb either has gotten signed or is going to get signed. But for me, and that's my other pet peeve, but, you know, way back in January, any football fan knew what are the Cowboys' top 3 priorities. We're talking about in January, 6 months ago. Re-sign Dak, re-sign Micah, re-sign CeeDee. We're in almost August. None of the 3 have happened, although maybe CeeDee has officially happened now, or it is. We almost made it a full 7 months with your top 3 priorities 0 for 3. Every football fan knew Dallas's offseason priorities were those 3. And as of right now, they're 0 for 3, maybe 1 for 3 in the next couple hours. But, like, that's another thing, right? I mean, every football fan knew, even if they didn't sign anybody, but they signed all 3 of those guys to long-term extensions, like in April, let's say. We'd all feel better right now than we do. And yeah, so, but Dak is just kind of like, I think it's that relationship that both sides want to break up, but neither one knows how to break up. So saying all the right things, pretending that they love each other, when really Dak's like, y'all don't want to pay me top dollar? I'm going to get it. whether it's from y'all or somebody else, but I'm getting it. So I think both sides know it's time to go. That's the way I look at it. And even if they're not going to be that bold and, play Trey Lance as a starter or whatever, I think you at least got to get him in, like in goal line situations, like use his athleticism. I thought when they got him, I thought they would do that last year. When you're inside the 10-yard line, zone read him, and he's walking into the end zone. Like, if you're not going to start him, at least let him have some plays. Because at minimum, if he does that and he does that well, maybe you can be like, you know what, we're not giving you, a 4-year contract, but maybe we give you a 2-year contract because in the small sample size, we liked what we saw. So you got to at least get him on the field. Even if Dak is fully healthy the whole year, you got to at least get Trey Lance on the field for a little bit. I mean, you got to see what he is. If he does the same exact thing this year, where he plays 0 snaps, how can you pay him?
Yeah, you can't.
You can't. Like, he's got to be on the field. And to me, it's very obvious. Use his athleticism. Once you get inside the 10-yard line, inside the 5-yard line, zone read him to death, you're going to score. So I think that Trey Lance has to see the field this year, even in that capacity. You got to see if you're going to pay him or not. Even if they re-sign Dak, shit, we know the importance of a backup quarterback. Cooper Rush played pretty well a couple years ago. We know how important a backup quarterback is. So even if you're going to sign Dak, you might as well see if you want to re-sign Trey Lance at the same time. You got to get him on the field. You have to. I mean, you traded what? It was what? Even though it was only like a 5th-round pick or something. It's not like a 1st or 2nd-round pick, but you gave up a pick for him. You gave up a draft pick, and then if he doesn't play any snaps next year, you gave up a draft pick for somebody that literally didn't play a snap. You can't justify that. You gave up a pick for him. You got to at least get him involved a little bit. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I know it was a pretty long-winded answer, but.
No, I'm glad you got that all off your chest, Ben.
Yeah.
I think you needed to do that.
He's been waiting. They haven't given him that time at the DTS podcast to get that off his chest.
It's just, yeah, I don't know. I just think at minimum, like you said, you got to get Trey Lance on the field. You have to.
All right, Ben, give us a Cowboys shout out. Just share your 3 favorite Cowboys, maybe social media accounts, websites, and/or content creators.
Yes, so I'll stick with Twitter, and this one again, I didn't go a ton of detail, but the Cowboy Reg, which is at Irish_Cowboys88. It's a really good follow, really good content. Another Cowboys fan is Lulu Bama Cowboys is the name. At Lulu LULU_Cowboys. She's not a content producer, but she's awesome, very passionate, very I've been on spaces with her, like she's just a good person overall, and she's a huge Cowboys fan. And call me a suck up, but across the Cowboys podcast, we'll go with that. We'll go with that. So that was an easy answer, so we'll go with those 3.
I like it.
Flattery gets you everywhere on this podcast, Ben.
Exactly.
Well, but Lulu, for real though, she's just a really good person. She posts a lot of Cowboy, like she doesn't do podcasts or anything, but I've been on spaces with her. Like she's real chill. She's a real good person. So if you don't follow her, LULU_Cowboys.
Make sure to drop the follow if I'm not already. I feel like I'm already following her, but I'll double check that. Yeah. All right, Ben. You've had some bold calls already on this show, man. Seems like every answer you've had has been a bold call, but here we are at the end of the episode. Cowboys edition. Give us a bold call, maybe a stat you think will happen, or just something you think will happen on this Cowboys team that you think is bold.
I got you covered. Micah Parsons leads the NFL in sacks.
Love it,
man.
Love it.
I really feel like that's not bold,
I can see it.
So to me, it was either that. No, not even either that. I'm gonna go with that. because he's been close, right? So to your point, maybe it's not that bold, but he doesn't get as many pass rush opportunities as those dudes. So it would be even more impressive if he did compared to the, Bosa and Garrett and TJ Watt. That's the one thing that Parsons has his whole career led in pass rush win rate, which all of you know. So that, to me, it's like, well, if you're going to say those are better pass rushers, well, can you really, really make that argument? Really? Pass rush win rate is a more indicator than total sacks.
Yep.
So you're saying they're better pass rushers, but are they?
Am I wrong for assuming you think that Mike Zimmer might actually unlock Micah Parsons?
I think there's another level. As scary as that is, I think y'all would agree too. I think there's another level, and who better to get that out of him than Zimmer? So yeah, I think that I think that Micah, go back to the example of him, training with and asking a lot of questions, being engaged with Lawrence. No, not Lawrence. DeMarcus Ware. I think he's going to want that coaching. I think he's going to even if Zimmer gets in his face. Like, I think Micah wants that. And I think Micah will be good with that. Because I think that's what he wants to be great, right? He wants, be great. You got to be coached hard. I mean, Reed gets in Mahomes' face, right? Belichick got in Brady's face. McDaniel, like you got to be coached hard to be that great. So yeah, I think Micah does have another level. Should be scary for the league.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for your time. Before we get you out of here, I mentioned the DTS podcast. Let us know a little bit about that and where we can find your content, man.
Yeah, so Death Taxes and Sports Podcast. You can find us on YouTube and under that, and then on Twitter it's at DT Sports is an easier way to say it, at DT Sports 33. And my two college friends, Jeff and Gary. Jeff was talking about doing a podcast for a long time, and finally, he kind of took the reins and made it happen. And over 2 years, about tomorrow will be episode 140. So kind of cranking them out, and we talk all sports. I mean, definitely now as football season is getting closer, we incorporate fantasy football into every episode, or we try to talk. Obviously the Olympics is on right now, so we'll have some discussions on the Olympics. But yeah, we added a fourth member called DTS Queen. We pronounced her name wrong for months because she never corrected us. It's Marisa. It's Marisa, although you say it is Marisa, so you assume Marissa. She didn't correct us, so we called it the wrong name forever. Then we're like, why didn't you just tell us? We call it the DTS Queen because she's got a lot going on. She's got her own stuff going on, and she's very, very busy. But whenever she does come on, she always brings it. So we love her as well. And probably the best guest that we have had thus far would be, we had Jeff Perlman on one episode, which was great. I mean, just listening to him, and that's probably the best guest that we've had thus far. And then there was a gentleman who used to work for ESPN, now for, I think, Pro Football Network, David Behrman. He was like the head of gambling at ESPN. He came on a couple of times too. So those were just, a couple of big names, but I mean, mostly it's just people like y'all, content producers, and, cross promoting is the best way. So, but yeah, we have a lot of fun, usually every Tuesday, 8:30 Eastern, and Death Taxes and Sports Podcast.
I'll come on and be your biggest guest next time. Don't worry.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time, man. Remind the people they can find you on X.
Yeah, it's right there in the stream at Ben DTS Podcast. And sorry, you guys, if I got long-winded, but I think everyone had fun, so that's most important,
No,
right?
it's great.
No worries, no worries. Mike, where can we find you, sir?
At CD Piglet, guys. Nice and easy. You know the drill.
Brenden?
At Brenden_Smith 26.
Guys, I'm Paul Ryan. You can find me on X at Paul_Ryan15. We appreciate you joining us, and we will see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.